starter homes, how to get a starter home, where you're getting a starter home, because I don't think you can have everything on your checklist.
Well, they're not coming at starter home prices anymore.
Well, that's a great point. So I don't even know what a starter home is anymore, which is why we invited into the studio. Trevor Halpern is with us. He's the CEO of a Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP. And how do we even define a starter home? If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need a starter home, I mean, for Pete's sake, the median home value right now is $450,000. For me, a starter home was under $100,000, 25 years ago. That's exploded. What's a starter home now?
Yeah, I mean, a starter home is exactly what you want it to be, what you need it to be. If you need it to be $300,000, that's your starter home. I just sold a physician his first home. It was $2.3 million. So that's his starter home. So it's all relative to what you need and what your particular, debt and income can afford.
I'm going to write that down. Become a doctor.
Yeah.
Okay.
$2.3 million starter home.
Holy cow. Wow. All right. So his needs are obviously going to be different than my needs.
Correct.
Fair to say. So we talked about some of the needs that a starter home has for people. And oftentimes when I think of a starter home, I think of a young family. I think of a young couple. I think of a young family. I think of the 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. I think of the school district, the neighborhood, right? Is it safe? What's the commute? And of course, affordability is massive on that. If my starter home is $300,000, is that something I can even find and still be in a safe neighborhood with a good school and all that kind of thing right now? I feel like some of these things there's a give and take.
There is a give and take, but interestingly, what we've seen in the last year or so is homes priced at $350,000, standalone single-family homes, $350,000 and below. We've seen an uptick of 70% increase in the available homes in that price range in our marketplace. Now, what we're seeing is a lot of that is in kind of the borderline counties, right? Southeast Valley, you're exiting Maricopa County, you're kind of on that fringe of what's considered the greater Phoenix metropolitan area.
So is this Queen Creek, Santan?
You got it.
Okay.
Exactly. So you're still able to go out there and get a standalone home, not a condo, not a townhouse, not a patio home, but an actual standalone home for $350,000 or so.
Talking with the CEO of Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP, Trevor Halpern. So let's talk a little bit more about that $350,000 house and what it looks like. If you're on the outskirts of the valley, you say it might still look like a starter home. What if you're in Phoenix? What does $350,000 get you?
Yeah, $350,000 in Phoenix proper is a little tougher to find. If I was to jump in the MLS right now and say Phoenix, single family home, under $350,000, we're just going to have a handful of them. And they're probably going to be borderline uninhabitable. You might be able to find some, but for the most part, they're going to need substantial work. So if that's your starting point as a first-time home buyer or as anyone looking for a home, you want a standalone single-family residence under $350,000, chances are you're probably not going to find something that you want to live in Phoenix.
Is the compromise generally the commute then?
You got it. Yeah, the old saying back during the boom days when we were building, people were buying homes all over the place, it was drive till you qualify. Just keep driving till you get further out till you can qualify for the home. And some of that is still applicable today.
Wow. Trevor Halpern is the CEO of Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP. Suppose I'm trying to get into a place. I'm trying to come up with my down payment. I'm trying to figure out the budgeting. Are there tricks that we can use to qualify for some things to make sure that we've got the money that goes down? Are there programs that we can access? I think this is where things get really murky really fast for the general schmuck like me, trying to figure out what can I afford.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, here's the thing: there's a plus and minus to the internet, right? If you plug that into Google, hey, what do I need to do to buy a home? Depending on your phraseology, you're going to get conflicting answers, right? So one person may type one thing and get one answer. One person may type slightly different, the other thing and get a totally different answer. So where do you go for your answers? The answer to that is you need to call an agent and you need to call a loan officer. You need to call a licensed loan professional, and preferably someone who's local, because they know the tips and the tips and the tricks for our particular locality. Are there USDA loans that we can get? Are there VA loans? Are there FHA loans? Are there first-time homebuyer programs? Are there grants? What do those look like? So every area has certain qualifiers for down payment assistance programs, DPAs as we call them. So a seasoned lender is going to know all the tricks. Hey, if you make a combined household less than $68,500, you qualify for this. If you make this much but under this, you qualify for this, right? So they are going to be able to intake all of your personal information, your income, your debt. Are you truly a first-time home buyer? Where do you work? Where do you live? Where do you want to buy? And depending on all of those, the conglomeration of all of those answers, that loan officer is going to be able to spit out for you an answer that is directly going to guide you and your specific set of criteria to be able to buy a home.
Did you get that, Joe? You got the USDA, the FHA, the VA for DPA, and then you want to get your PMI covered
by the CDC
and CYA along the way.
I got it. Got it all. Let's speak in generalities for a moment here, Trevor. You mentioned you've got the $2.3 million first-time home buyer. You might have somebody looking at a $300,000 condo for the first time. What are the biggest challenges you're hearing from buyers? Is it mortgage rates? Is it those home wants and needs? Is it something else?
Yeah, mortgage rates over the last, let's call it 2 years, have been the biggest thing, because that directly affects your ability to purchase a home. That directly affects affordability. For every 1%, the general rule of thumb is for every 1% interest rates go up, you lose 10% of your buying power. So when we're hovering at 7.25, it's tough. We've dropped down in recent weeks. We're about 6.75, 6.8. So it's not as pinchy as it was, but it's still a real factor. The other things that affect buyers, one, down payment. We spoke about that.
Yeah.
How do you scrape it up? How much do you actually need? So many people have different ideas in their minds of how much down payment they need. So down payment, affordability, monthly payment, that's on the front end of a buyer search. And then you get into the tactics and the strategy, offer to offer, home to home. What sort of screws can you turn? What sort of levers can you pull? What can you get from the seller? Can you get them to contribute towards your closing costs? Can you offset some of your expenses? What does the totality of the negotiation look like? And is it better to just drop the price, or is it better to have them contribute to lowering your interest rate? What is going to be the best move for you? And that's where getting very strategic as a consumer with a great lender and a great real estate agent, it's going to help you case by case, home by home, to overcome whatever obstructions are in front of your ability to purchase. And those obstructions for buyers shift day to day with the market. Every market dynamic, I've been in this business for 14 years. Every day is different. And every day we are sitting here trying to crack the riddle that the marketplace is presenting in front of our buyers' ability to purchase.
You mentioned the marketplace. I want to follow up on that, too, because we hear terms about a buyer's market and a seller's market. They get tossed around all the time. And you know that we've been in a seller's market for a couple of years now. And you got to wonder then, after hearing Trevor, if the good old days for sellers are gone, or if there's still hope of selling quickly and making some money on your place. Trevor Halpern has been kind enough to join us here as the CEO of Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP. And as you mentioned, talk with... if you're in the market, obviously we're not talking about just zooming around Zillow for a little while. I mean, if you're actually ready to take that next step, you got to talk with your agent and then find your loan officer, right? I mean, those are the two pros who are on your side to start with.
Yep,
that's the
absolute
big thing.
Keys.
Okay. A lot of talk, especially today. We're seeing the markets that are kind of down right now. A lot of concern. The president yesterday, in talking with Fox News, did not rule out the possibility of a recession. The new mantra is no pain, no gain. So for the next few months, is it possible that we start to see a downturn? And if that's the case, does everything that we know as far as this current weird normal that we're in, mortgage rates, housing prices, all that stuff, does it all start to change?
Yeah, typically what we see in recessionary environments is whatever the previous regime was in real estate, it changes. Now, when you look back historically over recessions in our lifetimes, rewind the tape for the last 7-8 recessions, there have only been 2 where prices have dropped. One was the Great Recession, right? A real estate and real estate financed created economic downturn. So of course we would expect, prices to go down.
Yeah.
The second one, prices only went down by 1 or 2%. So it wasn't a massive impact. All the other ones, prices have gone up. Why? Because interest rates go down. So typically, unless it's just a global economic catastrophe, what we see from a buyer standpoint, two things. One, interest rates typically go down to stimulate economic activity, right? So you can get a cheaper mortgage, which is what people are searching for and what people have been, a lot of people have been waiting on the sidelines and putting their money aside. Two, it creates churn. You lose your job in Phoenix, you go get a job in Texas. You lose a job in Colorado, you come to Phoenix for a job, right? So anytime there is churn, whether it is because of good reasons or bad reasons, it creates real estate transactions. And when there are a lot of real estate transactions, because interest rates are low and there's churn, we tend to see some competition. So recessions, from a standpoint of a real estate practitioner, are not necessarily evil in and of themselves. Of course, we never like to see people lose their jobs, a bunch of unrest. Who knows what a potential recession could look like in the future, but a standard kind of traditional economic contraction over a couple of quarters tends to create and lead to further real estate activity.
Interesting.
That is really interesting. Chris and I spoke with a Valley economist last week who said that Arizona, in his opinion, would be the state to be in if the country did enter a recession from a business standpoint. What effect do you think it would have on the market here in Arizona? I know you've got to stare into your crystal ball, and you said prices have only come down a couple times because those interest rates have plummeted. If your best guess, Trevor, what do you think would happen here in the Valley if we did hit a recession in the next year or so?
Yeah, best guess is we'll fare pretty well. As long as our political climate and our taxation climate stays relatively where it is, we're seen as pro-business. We're bringing in massive manufacturing plants. We're bringing in, the Taiwan Semiconductor, huge. They're expanding it. Multiple job creation areas throughout the Valley. And so if we remain friendly to business, if things go topsy-turvy in the country, we are highly likely to remain steadfast and strong. We are highly likely to see our real estate prices continue to go up as opposed to down, which is a misnomer that we see in the market.
Yeah.
Our prices are actually up 4.4, 4.6% over this time last year on a median basis. So we are not in some great contraction. And if the economy goes haywire and if we have economists thinking that Arizona is going to be good, I agree with that because of the environment that we have created through generations of pro-business policies.
So if I'm a seller and I've got, let's say, a $500,000 home, I don't need to sell today, freaking out that in 6 months or a year, if we do hit a recession, my house is going to be worth $400,000 or $300,000.
Yeah, I never, everyone's scenario is different. Whenever I have buyers or sellers call me with those types of questions, we break down their individual scenario. But I would say this, the typical person that owns a $500,000 house, talking real estate around a water cooler, making snap decisions about when to sell or buy based on market conditions, probably not going to time it well. If we have analysts in ivory towers in Manhattan on the 110th floor, peeling apart data and they can't figure it out, why are you or I going to be able to figure it out? So I always suggest to my sellers and buyers when these things come up, unless I really see something that I just would feel remiss in not telling them about, I just say, hey, if you can sit tight, if your job is secure and you feel good and you can outlast any sort of economic downturn, which typically takes a couple of quarters, not several years. The Great Recession, it took us 10 years for our pricing to recover, but that was the biggest economic calamity since the Great Depression. Right. Anything less than that, we can expect a pretty quick snapback. So I wouldn't go snap selling or snap buying based on potentials. I would analyze the market, when it's time to buy, when it's time to sell. Is this the right time? Why? And go down the course with a lender, an agent, other advisors. Figure out what's best for you.
Trevor Halpern is the CEO of Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP. All right, final question. I had a friend that just sold their house here recently, and they said they were worried about selling it. And they said, I got to do all these repairs. I got to do this. I got to fix the roof. And he was going all the. He talks to an agent. The agent says, don't do any of that stuff. You may find somebody that wants to come in and they can do it cheaper. That may be attractive to them. if you've got somebody that comes in, do you want them to do a bunch of repairs on things, or do you want them to try to find that specific buyer? I mean, are we in that market where sellers have that kind of flexibility?
Yeah, great question. I always advise my seller clients to only put work in if one of two things is going to occur, or preferably both. If you put $1 in, if you're investing $1, I want you to make $1.25 out of that. If that's redoing a bathroom or a kitchen where we know you're going to get returned, maybe. Two, if you sell your home quicker because of the money that you've put into it, that's money in your pocket. So preferably, I want to see that investment make you money, and I want your home to sell quicker. If it doesn't qualify in one of those two categories or both, I typically suggest you don't do it. A roof, other things. You may redo your countertops, and someone may come in and go, "These are hideous.
Yeah,
I'm going to redo them." So it's sunk cost. Typically, when it comes to roof and functional things, I advise my sellers, sit tight. Let's see what the buyer's going to ask for. The worst case is you're replacing your roof for $25,000. So instead of spending $25,000 or whatever it is, sit tight. A buyer may not even ask for it, and then divert that money to something else that they may ask for. So every buyer is going to ask for different repairs. Every seller is going to negotiate repairs separately. So I do not encourage my sellers to go around looking for things to fix. Let's let the inspectors do the inspection, the buyer make the request, and then you negotiate with the buyer.
Trevor Halpern, CEO of Phoenix-based Halpern Residential at EXP. Tremendous knowledge that you've dropped on us today for both buyers and sellers. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.